Hello everyone, a very good evening and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. Welcome to our weekly current affairs webinar. As you know, every Tuesday we cover the important current affairs of the last week, especially from the prelims point of view. So today I have chosen 8 important topics. Please take a look. These are the 8 topics we're going to discuss in today's session, and we will have a detailed, comprehensive discussion on each and every topic. These topics are from different subjects, of course, from science and technology, international relations, geography, etc. All the topics are very, very relevant for your prelims, and many topics will be important for your mains examination as well. All right, so let's start with the first topic and let's take a look at the Gaganyaan mission that was in news last week. Last week, ISRO has successfully conducted one of the first tests related to the Gaganyaan mission. The crew escape module test was successfully conducted, and this topic was in news. So let's understand what was the development, what was this test which was conducted, and what is the Gaganyaan mission all about. The Gaganyaan mission is India's first manned space flight. It was announced in 2018 by Prime Minister Modi. In 2018, the government of India laid down a goal for ISRO to send astronauts, Indian astronauts, on an Indian space mission into the low Earth orbit. So, this would be our first manned space flight. And as part of this mission, several preparatory tests are being conducted. Several critical technologies need to be tested before we can actually send Indian astronauts into the orbit. Given the risks involved in such a mission, absolute care has to be ensured that every critical technology is tested out before carrying out the actual human space flight. So, as part of these tests, which are going to begin, one of the first test flight of the mission has been successfully carried out, which is the crew escape module test. You can see the test vehicle, which was used in the image given over here. After the success of the mission, ISRO even tweeted that the TVD1 test flight, this was the call name or the code name that had been assigned to the mission, the TVD1 test vehicle demonstrator 1 mission was successfully conducted, and the critical technology related to crew escape module was successfully tested by ISRO. In fact, initially there were some glitches. The mission was supposed to take off at 8 a.m., but due to adverse weather and also due to a certain glitch in the launch sequence, the launch eventually got delayed till 10 a.m. But finally, the mission lifted off successfully, and all the stated objectives of the mission were achieved. So now, based on this, let us take a look at what is Gaganyaan mission. What does it really entail? How does it help India in the long run? What key technologies have to be developed for the mission? And what was this test all about? What is the crew escape system? These basics have to be covered because you can definitely expect prelims questions based on this. All right. So let's start by understanding what exactly is the Gaganyaan mission. As I told you, it was launched in 2018 by Prime Minister Modi, and this would be India's first manned space flight. If we achieve the mission successfully, India would become the fourth country in the world after Russia, United States, and China to send humans to space. Only 3 countries have managed to achieve this remarkable feat. That is Russia and US during the Cold War era, starting from 1950s itself. Russia and US succeeded in deploying humans into space. Then China also has succeeded in sending astronauts into space. So if India succeeds in the Gaganyaan mission, we would become the fourth country to have a successful human space flight. So India's vision is to ensure that all the critical technologies needed for the mission are indigenously developed in the country. Enough tests are conducted to ensure the overall safety of the mission, because the safety of the crew comes right at the top for ISRO. More than the mission, the safety of the crew will be the top priority in any manned space flight. So, this is the ambitious goal that ISRO has laid out. And hopefully, by 2025, India should be successful with this mission. So, let us look at the components of Gaganyaan. What are the key modules and components involved? What technologies will be tested? And how does it help India? See, under the Gaganyaan mission, the goal is to send three astronauts, and one of them is likely to be a woman. So the goal is to send three astronauts into a low Earth orbit of around 400 kilometers. Deploy the crew module in a low Earth orbit of around 400 kilometers. And this is likely to be a mission that might last anywhere between 3 to 7 days. The minimum set goal is at least to place the astronauts in the orbit for 3 days. If everything goes well, it might be extended up to almost 1 week. So that is the set goal. And of course, after conducting all the experiments, right, the crew will be brought back safely and the crew module will splash into the Indian waters. Is that clear? The mission, it will lift off, insert the crew module into the desired orbit. The astronauts will remain in orbit in the crew module conducting their scientific experiments. And once the mission is done, the crew module will be brought back. It will descend back into the atmosphere. It will make a re-entry and the module will land in Indian waters. So the goal is to bring the astronauts back safely after completing all the scientific experiments. So for such a complex mission, you need many key technologies to be tested out. Starting with your launch vehicle, you need a reliable and a proven launch vehicle because the payload will be on the heavier side, right? The payload could anywhere be between 5 to 6 tons. So you need a powerful rocket, a very powerful launch vehicle, which is human rated, meaning it should be declared safe for human travel. Conducting regular space launches is very different. It's a different ball game altogether. When you're just sending satellites and other payloads into orbit, right? It's a different ball game altogether. But when you're sending humans into orbit, you need to place the safety of the crew as the topmost priority, even more than the mission itself. In a worst case scenario, even the mission can fail, but you need to ensure the safety of the crew and bring them back safely. That is always the top priority. So one important technology is to ensure that we have a human rated launch vehicle which is safe enough for human launches. It should be powerful enough to lift the payload into the desired orbit, and many key technologies related to the mission have to be tested out. For example, the module in which the crew will be stationed, the crew module, it should provide for Earth-like conditions, habitable conditions, the right oxygen level, pressure conditions. They need to be maintained, and the crew has to be protected from all the adversities present in outer space, from solar weather to cosmic rays, right? And the vacuum and the pressure conditions present, they pose threat to human life. So you need specialized space medicine, space clothing to protect the crew members. The astronauts will have to wear special gear to protect themselves, and there should also be advancements in space medicine to look after the overall health, physical and mental health of the astronauts. There should be emergency mechanisms available to abort the mission if required, because anything can go wrong either during launch, right, on the launch pad itself, or during the launch sequence, or even in orbit. Things can go horribly wrong, right? And we have seen such incidents happening with other space agencies. So to ensure the crew is safe, you need to test out many crew safety modules. So this requires advanced technology, right? Testing out these critical technologies for a manned mission is not going to be easy. So ISRO is planning to conduct a series of tests in the coming months, including an integrated airdrop test. I'll explain what this is. A paired abort test, we'll discuss this as well. And finally, the test vehicle flights. This is the mission which was carried out last week, the first ever Gaganyaan test mission. That's why it was named as TVD-1, Test Vehicle Demonstrator 1, to test the crew escape module. Is that clear? Now let me show you the key components of the mission with focus on the launch vehicle first. ISRO is using the GSLV Mark III rocket, the most powerful rocket in India's arsenal, the GSLV Mark III, which now has been renamed as LVM-3. It was earlier known as GSLV Mark III, which is India's most powerful rocket, right? And now it's renamed as LVM, Launch Vehicle 3, Launch Vehicle 3. And you can see that depicted here in the image. This has been human rated. The launch vehicle has been tested out for its reliability and safety, and it has been certified safe for a human launch. You can see the different stages of this launch vehicle. It will have solid strap-on propulsions, followed by a liquid stage engine. And then comes your cryogenic stage, one of the most critical stages in the launch vehicle. In cryogenic engines, cryogenic combustion is carried out, where liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen at extremely cold temperatures, at cryogenic temperatures, are made to burn. And this kind of combustion is called cryocombustion, right? Where extremely low temperature oxygen and hydrogen is fused to carry out a combustion, right? Which is very hard to control. But the advantage is that cryogenic combustion releases tremendous thrust. It gives the enormous thrust needed to carry heavier payloads into the desired orbit, even if required to geosynchronous geostationary orbits. That is how powerful cryogenic engines can be. So mastering this technology had been a challenge for India, but ISRO has finally achieved the impossible. Because since 1990s, India was struggling to develop a cryogenic engine. It's taken almost 30 to 40 years of effort and several failures and setbacks to finally achieve a successful cryogenic stage. Now, followed by this, you will have your orbital module stationed over here. And this orbital module will consist of a service module and a orbital module. It will have a service module. There are two components in this orbital module, a service module and a crew orbital module. Is that clear? The crew module will obviously consist of the crew, the astronauts. This is where the astronauts will be stationed. So crew module has to provide for Earth-like conditions, habitable conditions for the astronauts. The service module will provide all the basic logistics for the mission. It will carry all the logistics needed for the astronauts, from the experiments to the basic food and medicines, etc. Everything will be carried by the service module, and the crew module will carry the astronauts. So this together forms your orbital module stationed over here. So this is what cryogenic engine will lift off finally in the last stage and insert into the desired low Earth orbit. Then can you see this top over here? This antenna-like structure at the top of the orbital module. This will be the crew escape system. This entire assembly is the crew escape system. This is exactly what was tested in last week's mission. Is that clear? To ensure that if something goes wrong, the orbital module should be safely detached and removed. The orbital module should be safely separated. If an emergency arises, this has to be safely separated to ensure the safety of the crew. As I told you, on the launch pad itself, the mission might go wrong, right? So let's say there is a explosion on the launch pad itself. In such a scenario, the orbital module has to be ejected far away to ensure the safety of the crew, and they should land safely. Or during launch or in the orbit, things might go wrong. So throughout the mission, whenever there is an emergency, if a call is taken to abort the mission, keeping in mind the safety of the crew, that is where the crew escape system comes into picture, the crew escape module. It is this mechanism which will safely pull out the crew module away from the launch vehicle and take it to a further distance, and the crew module will then land safely in Indian waters. Is that clear? Now, please take a look at what the orbital module will consist of. It consists of two components, as I told you, a service module, which provides the required logistical support, and a crew module. The crew module has to be specifically designed for re-entry, because when any object enters the atmosphere, right, it undergoes tremendous friction, leading to severe heating, which can completely destroy the object. So the crew module, which consists the astronauts, when it is making a re-entry, it will have to withstand thousands and thousands of degrees of temperature, right? So it needs to be assembled and built in such a way that it can withstand the tremendous temperature, the pressures, the forces that are acting when the module will descend finally after the mission, right? The astronauts will experience tremendous G-force. So at all the given points in time, the astronauts have to be safe. They need to be brought back safely. The module has to survive the re-entry, and then the parachutes have to deploy in order to land the module in the ocean. Is that clear? So these are the technologies which are being tested out right now. So going forward, you will see further tests regarding the crew module and the service module, which will be conducted. All right. So as of now, the initial batch of astronauts for the Gaganyaan mission have been chosen. The initial batch, the preliminary batch, has been chosen from the Indian Air Force. Some of the top pilots of the Indian Air Force have been screened thoroughly by ISRO and Indian Air Force together, and they've chosen an initial batch which currently is undergoing very, very rigorous training. All right. An astronaut training facility has come up in Bengaluru. You can see that in the image over here. Bengaluru, in a way, will be the base of the mission, right? The astronaut training facility is located here. Indian astronauts have already been sent to Russia to train with Roscosmos. Russia has played a critical role in training the initial batch of Indian astronauts. Then France and US are also playing a role. They're going to help India in the field of space medicine and space clothing, which is critical for the safety of the crew members. France, especially, the French Space Agency, the CNES, is working with ISRO on space medicine. Russia also is helping India with regard to space medicine and space clothing. But Russia's biggest contribution is in training the Indian astronauts. They've already undergone the initial phases of their training. They've undergone survival training. They've undergone training regarding all the flight procedures, a basic medical training, then training to improve their physical, mental fitness, right? So all these courses are being conducted in a very rigorous manner to prep the three final astronauts who will be chosen for the mission. All right. As of now, we don't know their identity. So it's kept classified. So a number of astronauts have been chosen in the initial batch. Out of this initial batch, 3 of them will be chosen finally for the mission. And most likely, according to ISRO, 1 astronaut will be a woman. Now, coming to the major tests that are planned, which you are going to read about in newspapers again and again. These are the various tests you're going to read about. One is the test vehicle missions, which we are discussing, which took place last week. Then integrated airdrop test, pad abort test, unmanned flights, and finally the actual mission. Let me tell you what these tests are. A pad abort test, or PAT, essentially provides for an abort sequence if things go wrong on the launch pad itself. If an emergency develops on the launch pad and if the safety of the mission and the crew is under threat, an abort will be initiated to ensure that the crew is safely extracted from the launch vehicle. All right. One such test was conducted in 2018. In 2018 itself, ISRO conducted a pad abort test. But right now it has become redundant because the whole profile of the mission has changed. The technology is being used. The very design of the mission has changed. So as a result, new pad tests have to be conducted. A series of pad abort tests will be conducted very soon. By the end of this year, ISRO plans to conduct one more pad abort test, and throughout the next year, there will be a sequence of pad abort tests which will be conducted. Then comes your test vehicle mission, where the test vehicle itself, especially the crew module, is tested out along with the launch vehicle. All right. So in components or in phases, each component will be tested out like we tested the crew escape module. Then comes the integrated airdrop test, where the crew module is dropped from a helicopter. This mission is also planned for later this year. ISRO plans to conduct this test by December of this year. A Chinook helicopter, most likely, which can lift heavier objects, will be used. We have procured the Chinook helicopter from the US for the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army. So this heavy lift helicopter will be used to lift the crew module to a certain height, and it will be dropped to study the descent phase of the crew module, to study how the module will descend, how it will orient, right? How it can avoid the heating, how it can safely deploy the parachutes and finally land in water. So this entire sequence will be simulated through an airdrop test. Just like a module would re-enter the atmosphere, right? Those similar conditions will be simulated by dropping it from a very, very high altitude. So these are the basic tests which will be conducted in the coming months. And once everything is ready, finally unmanned flights will be carried out. Without the crew, at least a couple of missions will be tested out. And most likely, the Vyom Mitra humanoid will be used in the unmanned mission. ISRO has developed a humanoid, a robotic assistant, which has been named Vyom Mitra, a friend of astronaut, right? Vyom in Sanskrit means space. So in these unmanned flights, the humanoid robot might be sent. And once all the technologies are tested, safety is ensured, then the actual mission will be carried out, maybe in 2025. Of course, this mission will witness a lot of delays. Delays are common in such a complex mission, right? It's already been 5 years since it was announced, and yet we are still conducting the tests. Initial goal was to launch the mission in 2022. The reason why the delays have happened is because one was the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. Second is the technical issues that you face and you come across that will disrupt the mission, right? You can't perfect these technologies in one single go or in one shot. There will be many iterations, many changes that will happen in the profile of the mission, right? So the overall development of the technologies will be time taking and time consuming, as safety of the crew is the most important, right? So the complexities involved in the mission and the pandemic had delayed the mission, but right now ISRO is back on track. Hopefully by 2025, we'll see the mission launching, right? Making India the fourth country to execute a manned space flight. Now, coming to last week's test, the abort mission of the test vehicle, TVD-1 test, which was carried out. This was the mission. This was the test vehicle which was used. You can see the test vehicle here. This whole assembly is the test vehicle, the launch vehicle. All right. It launched the crew module. It launched the crew module, almost achieving a speed of Mach 1. Mach 1 is nothing but the speed of sound. So almost the vehicle achieved the speed of sound. And that is when the abort sequence was initiated. The emergency condition was simulated and the abort sequence was initiated. And immediately the crew escape system takes over. And this crew escape system takes off the crew module along with it and takes it away from the launch vehicle to ensure the safety of the crew. So this should function in a fraction of a second, right? The moment the abort sequence is initiated, immediately the crew escape system, which basically comprises of a series of thrusts and motors, will lift off separately, launching the crew module away from the launch vehicle, which could be dangerous, right? There could be an explosion. So the crew module has to be taken as far away as possible, and then it will be dropped through parachutes back into the ocean. So this was the essential mission that was carried out. You can look at the crew escape system, how it looks, the breakdown over here. You can see the crew module here and the whole crew escape system, the abort system here, comprising of a nose cone, several motors, avionic systems, right? So this whole assembly that you see here, it consists of specially designed thrust motors that will generate tremendous thrust. Tremendous thrust will be generated in a fraction of a second to lift off and separate the crew module and take it away to a safe distance. That was a mission profile. You can see how the launch sequence was executed during the test conducted last week. The test vehicle lifted off, and then as soon as it was achieving Mach 1, the test vehicle was separated, but the abort sequence got initiated. So crew escape system took away the crew modules to safety. You can see how it has been taken away to safety and then dropped back, right? And the parachutes will deploy and finally descended into the Bay of Bengal. This was the entire mission. All right. The launch vehicle also splashes down. The crew escape system also splashes down separately, but the crew module will remain safe from any possible threat or danger. Once it splashed in Bay of Bengal, it was recovered by the Indian Navy, which was on wait. The Indian Navy had been deployed, right? Naval ships, drones, and advanced helicopters were deployed to track the crew module. And once it splashed down, it was recovered by the Indian Navy and returned back to ISRO. So this was the whole profile of the test mission which was carried out. Understood? Now, it's one of the key technologies which is going to be a part of the mission. So going forward in the next 1 year, you will see many more tests. There will be fewer tests of the crew escape module. There will be abort test, the pad abort test, the airdrop test, the unmanned flights. So that is why the topic becomes very important. It will keep happening every few months, right, from now onwards. So you can expect a prelims or mains question based on the Gaganyaan mission. Now let's take up a question. Let us see how many of you can understand the significance of Gaganyaan mission. This question will test you on the significance of the mission. The question says ISRO's upcoming Gaganyaan mission will serve which of the following objectives? It will help enhance science and technology levels in the country and help inspire the youth. It will help in improvement of industrial growth. It will help in development of technology for social benefits. It will help in improving international collaboration. I'll launch the poll. Let us see how many of you can get it right. I'll give you 30 seconds. Take your time. Think carefully. Think about the objective of any space mission, especially a manned space flight. What benefits can we think of? How can it help India? Think on those lines and then give me the answer. 10 more seconds to go. I want all of you to attempt the question. 3 seconds. Very good. 58%. Majority of them have given the right answer. Very good. See, any space mission, especially that of ISRO, it will not only aid in the development of science and technology and inspire the youth, it will also bring industrial growth and social benefits. Correct? Because in such a complex mission, there will be several components and technologies involved. Right now, we are privatizing the space sector. We have opened up the space sector for private participation. There are space startups that are coming up. There is FDI coming into the space industry. Right? Big space companies are involved in the space industry right now. From Larsen and Toubro to Tata, Godrej, Mahindra, all the big names are involved in the space industry. We have a host of startups that have come up, right? So they will be involved in any of these missions. They'll work closely with ISRO to produce the components, the spare parts, the technologies needed. It will help in boosting overall research and development ecosystem and boost the space industry and the related industries. From software industry to metallurgical industry to battery management, all the key technologies associated with the mission will get a big boost. And don't forget, many of these technologies can be commercialized, turned into civilian products, and several of these technologies can have a social impact as well, along with its economic impact. Now, take a look at our remote sensing satellites, for example, or the broadcasting satellites that we have, or the navigation satellites that we have in orbit, the Earth observation satellites we have in orbit. They all serve a particular purpose, right? They serve military applications, they help improve communication, they help in mapping resources, in helping in disaster management, right? And they help in identifying the perfect crop for farmers in agriculture. It help in fisheries management, right? So there are many, many civilian applications as well of space technologies that will help the society as well. Look at how our space program has already benefited the poor people, the farmers, right? The patients. Today we are able to provide telemedicine, tele-education. So there will be a lot of social benefits from any space program. The same applies for Gaganyaan mission. It will drive research in the industry. It will drive growth in the industry because number of these technologies can be commercialized. It will involve several private companies and startups as well, driving industrial growth. So it will be a boost to science and technology. It will definitely inspire the youth. And of course, there is international collaboration. It will boost international collaboration in the space sector, right? We're already working with Russia, France, US, Japan, right? So it will be a big boost for international collaboration. So all the four are correct. And hence, option D is your correct answer. Now, I hope the topic is clear. I have explained this as slowly as possible in complete detail. Let me know if you have any doubts, any questions. And after that, I'll start with the next topic. Gunjan is asking, sir, if I skip the daily analysis of Hindu newspaper at 10 in the morning, then this webinar is enough for me or not? See, if you ask me, ideally, I would suggest there is no substitute for daily preparation with regard to current affairs. Current affairs is not something you do weekly or monthly. These are for mainly for your revision. Or if you, let's say, missed out on one day because of some pressing circumstances. But in a day, on a day-to-day basis, you have to attend the newspaper analysis sessions every single day, right? In every day, there will be so many articles. You can't cover them, hope to cover all of them in one single go at the end of the week or at the end of the month. The weekly sessions, the monthly magazines, they only help you to revise, cover everything, revise everything. But ideally, do newspapers on a daily basis. There is no substitute to that. Akash is asking, please explain the difference between the PAT test and the recently conducted test by ISRO. Okay. See, the PAT test, as the name itself tells you, it's a pad abort test. This is the test conducted to take care of any emergency that might occur on the launch pad itself. Even before the launch could happen, things might go wrong on the launch pad, right? So there might be an imminent explosion of the whole rocket, which will threaten the crew. So at this point, the crew module will be released, ejected to ensure the safety of the crew. So this test conducted on the launch pad without launching, right? This is the pad abort test, where the abort mission or the abort sequence happens on the launch pad itself. The latest crew escape module, which was tested, the test flight, right? The test vehicle TD1 mission, TVD1 mission. This is the abort which is done during flight. When the launch vehicle has already lifted off, but then something goes wrong, threatening the safety of the crew. So during the flight, if something happens, if an emergency comes up, then a abort sequence is initiated. This is your crew escape which happens, the crew escape module which kicks in during the flight. This is what was tested last week. Pad abort test is the same, but on the launch pad, without the launch taking place. So before the launch or right at the moment of the launch, if things go wrong, that is when the pad abort will be initiated. So this is the pad abort test. All right, both are abort sequences. The difference is that one happens on the launch pad itself, The other happens during the flight because the dynamics involved are different. Correct? So both the technologies have to be tested out. Ashwin is asking, how will it help in social benefits? See, in any space mission, as I told you, there can be many, many social benefits. The experiments we might conduct in Gaganyaan mission, right, might help us find answers for various biological processes. The experiments the astronauts will conduct in outer space might give us new insight into biological processes, which might help us maybe develop a new variety of crop, which might help agriculture, which might help farmers, or a new space technology which we are mastering, right? It could be commercialized. It might find many applications in the industry, or the government might use it for providing better services. As I told you, Earth observation satellites of India, the remote sensing satellites, they all have a social purpose, right? They're helping fishermen, they're helping farmers, they're helping in disasters, right? They're providing tele-education, telemedicine. Similarly, the technologies associated with Gaganyaan mission will be a big boost for the space industry, and there will be many indirect benefits that will flow from it. It may not be a direct benefit, but associated with these technologies and the mission, there will be indirect social benefits. Is that clear? Vishal is asking, sir, why man-made space mission is more important? See, one, man-made mission is about pride. It's about your global image. Very few countries have done it. So India being the fourth country will be a very big boost for India's global image. That is one. Second, by displaying these critical technologies, you can further plan space exploratory missions to further celestial bodies. Maybe a lunar mission to land astronauts on the moon. Consider maybe a lunar a lunar colony in the future, right? Or maybe humans on Mars, or humans on any celestial body, right? That is the long term plan of most space agencies. And today there is a rush back towards the moon. US, Russia, China, European countries, Japan, they're all planning manned missions to the moon in the coming decades. So recently PM Modi also has set a goal. By 2040, India plans to put an astronaut on the moon itself. So for space exploration in general, right, to explore the moon, maybe deploy humans on the moon, set up a colony there, right, even Mars, that would be the next logical step. And that is why manned space missions are extremely crucial. Sham is asking why the government is investing in these missions rather than poverty alleviation. See, my dear friend, in any initiative of the government, right, there will be different programs that will be taken up by the government as part of governance, as part of administration. There will be many different initiatives taken by the government. There will be poverty alleviation programs, there will be education related initiatives, healthcare related schemes, foreign policy related expenditure, science and technology related expenditure. None of these expenditures are a waste of money, right? A country, a major power like India, is bound to spend on different sectors. Now, just because we are spending on space missions doesn't mean we are neglecting poverty alleviation, doesn't mean we are neglecting education, food security, agriculture, etc. And don't forget, any space mission has a social benefit, a industrial benefit. It will drive economic growth. The mission alone, Gaganyaan mission alone, is going to create thousands of jobs in the industry, because many private players will be involved in assisting ISRO in the mission, in developing the components, right? So thousands of jobs will get created. That is poverty alleviation for you again. The technologies will have wider social impact in the long run. In the next 40 to 50 years, you will see this widespread social impact as well, right? You can't even quantify that. So spending on space mission is not a waste of money. Yes, poverty alleviation is a focus. At the same time, space missions are also an equal focus. All right, India has enough resources to allocate budget for all these initiatives and pursue them simultaneously. Is that clear? Now, for example, you tell me, since you're preparing for UPSC exams, does it mean you've stopped playing any sport? Does it mean you've stopped watching movies? No, you divide your time, you do everything which is required for your well being while concentrating on your goal to crack the exam. Similarly, the government as well allocates adequate resources, keeping in mind the overall interests of the nation. So, space missions are not a waste of money. It will not hamper poverty alleviation, rather, it helps in poverty alleviation. Student is asking, so Rakesh Sharma was already sent to space. How is this mission different? Rakesh Sharma, the first Indian astronaut, was sent on a Soyuz spacecraft, which was a Soviet spacecraft, not an Indian mission, right? Soviet Union offered to take friendly countries on board, and one Indian astronaut, Rakesh Sharma, was taken in 1984. So that doesn't make it an Indian mission, right? So India has to carry out the mission on its own, test out the technologies, and start further exploring outer space. Next, student is asking, will they use the same crew for all the testing and the new crew module? Crew is not used in testing. Who will risk the crew in a test? Right? Test is completely unmanned because things will go wrong in a test. Only when everything is tested and safety is ensured, only then the crew is placed in the crew module. That is the last step. Until everything is certified, all the unmanned missions happen. The manned mission will not take place. So all the tests which are being done, they are all unmanned. Please understand that. All right. So guys, let's move on to the next topic, a very important topic from international relations. Last week, there was a big development in China. In Beijing, Chinese President Xi Jinping hosted the third Belt and Road Summit, the Belt and Road Forum. The third Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation was convened by China on the 17th and 18th of October. So let's understand more about this initiative. Let's discuss what is Belt and Road Initiative of China. Let's look at the background. Let's understand the progress and the status and what happened at the latest summit and what is India's stand on this initiative. All right. The Belt and Road Initiative of China is an ambitious program that was launched 1 decade ago. It is seen as a pet project of the current Chinese Premier Xi Jinping. He propounded this idea in 2012, and based on this, it was launched in 2013. So under this initiative, the vision of Xi Jinping and the Chinese government, the PRC, is to create a global infrastructure, a global network of infrastructure that will boost connectivity and thus drive growth and thus create opportunities for all the countries involved and thus establish China's predominant influence across the world. The focus of the initiative is to link Asia closely with Africa, Europe, and China has further extended its vision to even cover the Pacific and Latin America as well. So this is a global level infrastructure initiative. It involves maritime links, development of seaports, development of transshipment terminals, the logistics needed to handle maritime shipping. It also involves the construction of roads, railway lines, oil gas pipelines, power plants and power grids, industrial clusters and corridors. It also includes green renewable projects, that is, clean renewable energy projects. It also includes urban transportation, all right, and it also includes digital connectivity, that is, OFC cables, which carry your internet and your mobile internet connectivity. So, all such connectivities are part of it. There is sea-based component, land-based component, clean energy, and as well as digital connectivity. So under this ambitious global initiative, there are two main components. Please make a note. It includes a land-based component called the Silk Road Economic Belt and a maritime component, a sea-based component, the Maritime Silk Road Initiative, also known as the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road Initiative. So China is essentially trying to revive its ancient glory by reviving the ancient Silk Route. I hope you know in ancient times, China was the only producer of silk, just like India was the major producer of spices. So from India, spices were exported in ancient times around the world. That is called the spice route. So the silk trading route from China is called the Silk Route. So China's goal is to revive these ancient trading routes and restore China's dominance in the global economy. So it not only establishes China's economic influence, but also it will establish its strategic influence. All right. Here in this map, you can see the land-based component, the Silk Road economic belt, which is designed to connect China with Central Asia, West Asia, and South Asia. From here, the plan is to link with Eurasia and Europe. So this land-based component will include roads, railway links, pipelines, that is oil gas pipelines, power plants and power grids, then clean renewable energy projects, and as well as digital connectivity. All right. Then the other component, the maritime component, is to link the major seaports of China with important strategic seaports across Southeast Asia, Pacific, the South Asia region, West Asia and East Africa, and all the way till Europe. This is China's goal and vision. So it is going to invest in seaports. It has built strategic seaports across the world, right? Chinese banks will provide loans to finance these projects in various countries. Is that clear? And there is a concern that these economic commercial projects might eventually acquire a strategic angle, meaning China might start using them as potential military bases in the future if required, in order to protect its investments and to protect the trade routes, right? The Chinese Navy, the PLA Navy might start deploying into these ports, or the PLA Army, the PLA Air Force might start using these facilities being created, thus serving a strategic purpose as well. That is what experts have a concern about. Many governments, including India and foreign Western governments, they all have a concern that China might turn these commercial projects, economic projects, into strategic projects. China, for example, already has set up a military base at Djibouti. China has set up its first foreign naval base at Djibouti, located at this important choke point, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. This is where Bab el-Mandeb Strait is located. Bab el-Mandeb Strait. It's a vital link between Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. So this is where piracy is very rampant and it's a choke point. So many countries have naval bases in Djibouti, and China also has set up its first foreign naval base over here. It has built many such strategic projects, right? From Gwadar in Pakistan to Hambantota in Sri Lanka, and key projects in Myanmar, the Kyokfu port in Myanmar. So across the region, China has been funding these critical projects as part of its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. So it's been a decade since it was launched. The first two summits happened in 2016, 2017. All right. From 2016, 2017 is when the first summit started. 2019, the second summit was held, and now the third summit was organized in 2023. So let us see where the project stands. What is the progress? What's the current status? And what issues are present around it? Before the third summit that was held last week, China brought out the first ever white paper. Basically, it brought out a document. For the first time, it has brought out an official document in the public domain, highlighting the progress and success of the initiative. So according to this white paper on the Belt and Road Initiative, more than 150 countries in the world and 30 international organizations have signed 200 agreements in total. Kindly remember this. More than 150 countries have signed on to the initiative from across 5 continents. 30 international organizations are also part of it. And in total, 200 agreements have been signed, meaning 200 different projects are being taken up. According to China, the total investment till now in the last 1 decade is touching $380 billion. That is quite massive. China, along with its partners and few global institutions, has already raised $380 billion in funding to finance these projects. But however, please remember, not all 150 countries have taken up these projects already. Some have simply signed on to the initiative, but only in few countries the projects have started. Not every country that is signed is hosting a BRI project. Please understand that. Is that clear? Some countries have signed on to it. They participate in the summit. They work with China, but they themselves don't host any project as of now. Only few countries are hosting BRI projects, and it is also seen that being part of BRI doesn't guarantee any preferential treatment from Chinese banks when you take the loans. All right, please know that China is not doing charity here. It's not donating funds. It's not giving aid. It is giving loans. Usually, concessional loans are given when funding such projects in other countries. But China is not really giving any kind of preferential treatment. It's not providing very concessional loans, flexible loans. Rather, it's providing loans at very higher rates and with very strict repayment schedules, which has become a concern of its own. All right, so there are many concerns and drawbacks associated with the project. Just because 150 countries have signed doesn't mean all of them have a BRI project. Few of them have a BRI project, others are simply part of the initiative, and not everyone is getting preferential treatment. The loans being given out, they need not be concessional or flexible, right, which might become a huge burden for the small countries. Now, in 2017, when the first summit took place, 29 countries had participated. 29 head of states, head of governments, prime ministers and presidents participated in the summit. This improved to 37 countries in 2019 when the second forum took place. Right? This was a big improvement. So more countries were showing interest. That's what it means. By 2019, from 29 to 37 countries, 37 leaders participated. 37 prime ministers and presidents took part in the initiative, showing the interest in the project. But now, in the third summit, which took place last week, the number has fallen. Only 23 leaders participated from 23 countries. So what does this tell you? It tells you that the interest for several countries has gone down in the BRI initiative. It is mainly because of the concerns associated with these Chinese projects and Chinese loans. In many countries, some of the major projects have run into problems. For example, some projects have triggered environmental concerns. In Laos PDR, there is a project that China has funded and taken up. It's being taken up by a Chinese company, but it has led to large-scale environmental destruction. It has caused a lot of pollution, environmental damage. Similarly, there are many dam projects, hydropower projects, right, and other road and rail projects, which have become very controversial on environmental grounds as a result of large-scale environmental destruction. So this is one concern, the large-scale environmental impact, which China is not addressing. Next, in many projects, people have been displaced. There is large-scale displacement of people. Obviously, for such projects, land has to be acquired. People have to be relocated. So those who are losing their land and homes, they are not being compensated fairly. Their livelihoods are not being protected. They are not being rehabilitated. So it's resulting in human displacement. Many of these projects have raised fears that this could be a strategic project, not a commercial project exactly, which China might use later for military purposes. This has become a concern. And more importantly, the loans which have been given, they have become a debt trap, a debt burden, pushing small countries into a debt trap. And hence it is also referred to as the debt trap diplomacy of China. All right. The worst part is that many projects have failed commercially. If you take Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, for example, the project has failed miserably to generate revenue. It's become a failed project commercially. So Sri Lanka could not repay the loans anymore as the project was not bringing any revenue. So Sri Lanka came under a severe debt burden. It couldn't repay the loans. And eventually, it had to lease the project to a Chinese company. The strategic Hambantota port, which failed commercially, was taken over by a Chinese company as Sri Lanka could not repay the loan. So this is where the fear comes up, that China is actually investing in strategic projects, not commercial projects essentially. Initially, it gives them a commercial angle. Later, if it fails commercially, China will take them over for the long term. And potentially, it might use that as a military base for the Navy and its armed forces to project its military power and influence. So there are many such concerns associated with these projects under the Belt and Road Initiative. From the fear of a debt trap to environmental degradation, pollution, displacement of people, right? And potentially misusing commercial projects for strategic purposes and the economic failure, the commercial failure of these projects. All these are major concerns. Is that clear? So that is why there is a criticism that these projects are designed to benefit only China. They are not mutually beneficial. That's what many experts are pointing out. It doesn't really help the other country taking all these loans and executing the project. The other small countries don't get any benefit. Rather, it becomes a one-sided equation where only China benefits from these projects. Either it'll extract the loan with high interest rates or gain commercial and strategic advantages while giving no advantage to the host country. So that is why the BRI project has become very, very controversial. There's a lot of negativity associated with it. Many countries are concerned whether they should go ahead with it or not. Now, where does India stand on this? If you saw the map that I showed you earlier, India was also shown as part of the initiative, right? Because China wanted India to be a part of it, as India is a massive market, right? A big trading partner for China. Obviously, China can't ignore India. So China initially, when it proposed the idea, it envisioned India also part of the initiative. But later, India has quit the initiative. We have boycotted all the three summits for one specific reason, which is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the CPEC, which is one of the key components of Belt and Road Initiative. This corridor connecting China and Pakistan, it seeks to link the Xinjiang province, the westernmost province of China and its capital Kashgar, with the strategic ports of Pakistan, that is Gwadar and Karachi. Right? Karachi is already a major port and a naval base, and China has built the Gwadar port in Balochistan. China has financed the Gwadar port's construction as part of the Belt and Road Initiative, as part of this economic corridor. And it is building a series of road and railway projects and pipelines, along with power plants and industrial clusters, which comprises this massive economic corridor, the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Now, the problem for India is with the alignment of this project. Look at the route. See where the project is passing through. It is passing through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. It's passing through Gilgit-Baltistan, which is Indian territory claimed by India as part of the erstwhile state of J&K. These are territories under the illegal occupation of Pakistan. So here, you have the Shaksgam Valley, which is part of POK in the Gilgit-Baltistan region. Shaksgam Valley belongs to India, claimed by India as part of Gilgit-Baltistan and erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. But Pakistan has given away Shaksgam Valley to China through a boundary agreement that was signed in 1963. Immediately after the India-China War of 1962, China-Pakistan formed a strategic nexus and they signed the Sino-Pakistan Boundary Agreement in 1963. Through this boundary agreement, Pakistan gave away a part of Gilgit-Baltistan, that is Shaksgam Valley, and gifted this to China. Since then, China has controlled the region, deployed troops as well, undertaken construction by investing billions of dollars in such connectivity projects. So that is the prime reason why India boycotted the Belt and Road Initiative, because it challenges India's sovereignty. The CPEC corridor is a threat to our sovereignty. It directly counters our claims over POK. It indirectly makes China a party to the Kashmir dispute. When it comes to Kashmir dispute, India has made it clear that it's a bilateral issue between India and Pakistan. We don't encourage any kind of third party involvement, be it United Nations or US or China or European countries. We don't encourage anyone to get involved in the Kashmir issue. It's an issue for India, Pakistan to decide and resolve. But indirectly, China becomes a party because it is investing billions of dollars in Shaksgam Valley. It would like to protect its investments, its key connections to the Arabian Sea, which is strategic for China because this project will help China bypass the Malacca Strait. China can bypass its weakness at Malacca Strait, which is a choke point. It can directly take oil supplies from West Asian countries, from the Gulf countries here, from Persian Gulf, directly into Gwadar and Karachi, and take the oil and gas into China via Pakistan without depending on Malacca Strait, which is between Singapore and Indonesia in Southeast Asia. So in a way, China is finding a shortcut. It wants to reduce its dependency on Malacca Strait, which is a strategic choke point, a weakness for China, and it's trying to create more direct routes for oil trade from West Asia. It can easily procure oil and gas from these countries. Now, China has plans to further expand this corridor and bring maybe Afghanistan and other countries as well in the region into this corridor. So that is a prime reason why India opposes the whole initiative. We have boycotted all the summits. We have not participated in any of the three summits because CPEC corridor, which is a key component of Belt and Road Initiative, directly threatens India's sovereignty. It's a breach of our sovereignty. That is why we oppose the corridor. We oppose the project itself. Is that clear? Now, coming to my last point here. Italy was the only European developed country from the G7 group which had signed on to the Belt and Road Initiative. But due to Western countries opposing it, Italy is looking to formally withdraw from Belt and Road Initiative. This is a new development. Initially, Italy had shown interest. It had signed the Belt and Road Initiative and took part in all the summits. But in the last few months, especially during G20 summit, Italy made it clear that it is looking to quit Belt and Road Initiative. As tensions between Western countries and China have increased, especially between US and China, has increased. Italy also has aligned with the other G7 members, with UK, France, Canada, Japan, and others. It has aligned with them and it has said it is going to quit. So it might quit very soon. That was shown during the third summit because it did not participate during last week's summit. When the last week's third summit happened, Italy was not a participant. So it shows that Italy is likely to withdraw. So now the G7 group of countries led by Western advanced industrialized democracies, they are trying to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative through the Build Back Better World Initiative, the B3W. Now it's been renamed as the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. And under this, during the G20, a major corridor was announced, the IMEC corridor, India, Middle East, Europe corridor, which is going to be part of the PGII, the Partnership for Growth for Global Infrastructure and Investment. PGII is the renamed, restructured version of B3W. All right. Couple of years ago, G7 countries launched Build Back Better World or B3W as a counter to the Belt and Road Initiative of China. This now has been restructured, renamed as PGII. And under this, a major corridor was launched at the G20 summit hosted by India, which is the IMEC corridor, which we studied in the previous class. Understood? So this is where the BRI stands as of today, right? The progress has been affected, even though many projects have been taken up, $380 billion in funding has been provided, right? It has definitely increased Chinese influence. Apart from all the positive developments for China, there are negatives as well. There is a lot of concerns about debt trap diplomacy, about China misusing the economic advantage, right? About China turning these projects into strategic projects, using it for military purposes, and also all the other concerns which we discussed. There has been slow progress in many projects. Many countries are looking to quit, like Italy and many others, right? And G7 countries are countering as well with their own initiatives. And India is a part of the Western-led initiatives with United States. So this is something you should understand about the BRI. All right. Now let's take up a question. Go through the question quickly. I'll launch the poll. Which of the following countries have not joined Belt and Road Initiative? India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Myanmar. I'm launching the poll. Let's see how many of you can get it right. I'll give you 15 seconds. It's a small question, that is enough. The poll is live. Let's see how many of you can answer this. Five seconds to go. Very good. 42% have given the right answer. Option C, 1 and 3 only. India and Bhutan, they have not joined Belt and Road Initiative. Myanmar has joined it. It is part of China-Myanmar Economic Corridor. Bangladesh has joined it. China is pursuing a corridor with Bangladesh and Myanmar as well. But India, Bhutan have not joined it. From South Asia, if you look at our neighboring countries, all the neighbors of India have joined the initiative, except for Bhutan. Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Maldives. All the neighboring countries of India, they are part of the initiative, except for Bhutan. So correct answer is 1 and 3, option C. All right. Now let's quickly look at your doubts, your questions. Anish is asking why there is depiction of Kolkata in the map. I explained why. Because China envisioned India to be a part of it when the idea was proposed. That's why the map shows India also to be a part of it. But we have quit the initiative because of the CPEC corridor and its alignment. Gunjan is asking, so don't you think Dragon's BRI is a spy eye on India? It's not meant exactly for spying on India. It's largely an economic initiative, right? Mainly to drive China's economic growth and to drive its economic influence. And with economic influence comes strategic military influence. Of course, there is a security threat, but it's not meant only to spy on India, right? For China, India is not the prime target. US is the prime target. China is miles above India in terms of its economic military strength. It's competing with US for global power status. So BRI is not a military initiative. It's not a spy initiative as such, but definitely there is a concern, right? The economic advantages China gains could be misused for strategic reasons. All right, so please understand that. Mega is asking, sir, any P5 member participating in summit? Russia is a participant. Amongst the P5, it's only Russia and China which are part of it. Of course, China is part of it. It is China's initiative. And its all-weather friend Russia is part of it. So during last week's summit, Russian President Putin, he participated. He met with Xi Jinping. He even suggested inclusion of the Northern Sea route as part of Belt and Road Initiative. Northern Sea route is the Arctic shipping route, which is opening up in the Arctic Circle. Glaciers, polar ice caps are melting due to global warming, due to rising temperatures. Many countries, Arctic countries, are trying to capitalize on the new shipping route which is opening up in the Arctic. It is of great strategic and economic significance as there are plenty of resources in the Arctic. So geopolitical competition has broken out in the Arctic, and Russia, being an Arctic power, wants to capitalize on the Northern Sea route. So it has urged China to include the Northern Sea shipping route under the Belt and Road Initiative. That is one big development which happened last week. All right. Any further questions? Vedashree is asking, why don't we choke Malacca Strait and makes China sign the Treaty of Shaksam Valley and pressurize Pakistan? See, basically you're suggesting war. Without a reason, if India were to choke Malacca Strait, which itself is very challenging, you'll be, first of all, disrupting freedom of navigation. You'll be violating international law without a valid reason. Next, you'll be the instigator. You'll be triggering a conflict, right? China will retaliate, leading to a full-fledged war. So don't ever suggest such immature ideas, right? Taking back Shaksgam Valley, capturing POK, or blocking Malacca Strait. These are military measures. You're basically pushing towards war. Don't ever suggest that in any answers. All right? India is never a aggressive expansionist power. Neither will it serve our purpose. There is no way India can stand up to China as far as a full-fledged military conflict is concerned. You need to acknowledge the fact that China is a vastly superior military and economic power. Is that clear? We are a formidable economy. We are also a formidable military. But there is a limit to our strength, right? Beyond a point, China will easily overpower India. So no one wants that. No government is foolish enough to trigger China. So please understand and don't give such suggestions. It sounds very immature coming from a UPSC aspirant. And trust me, the evaluators will look down upon such students. Understood? So be very careful about what you're suggesting. Never push for war. Never say we should take back POK, capture Shaksgam Valley, block Malacca Strait, attack China, attack Pakistan. Never use such loose words. It's easy to suggest that in the comfort of your home, right? But pushing for war is the last thing that you'll be doing. Rashika is asking, what's the impact of this project on India? What's the role of sovereignty of India? That's what I explained, right? This corridor directly threatens our sovereignty in POK, and also the rising economic influence of China also remains a concern for India. So those are the major impacts, the two major impacts. Now moving on, let's look at the next topic, the MQ-9B drones, which is an important part of India-US defense relationship. These drones are making a lot of news. It's one of the most advanced drones in the world. And it was in news because India is all set to finalize a deal for 31 MQ-9B drones by the start of next year. You can see the drone here in this image. It is developed by an American defense manufacturer, by an American aerospace company called General Atomics, or GA. GA, or General Atomics, is the designer and developer and producer of these drones. It was previously called the Predator, widely used by the US forces across West Asia, Afghanistan, and many other conflict zones. Then came the Reaper variant, which replaced the Predator variant. And now the latest version is the MQ-9B, which is the most advanced American drone ever manufactured. And India is procuring them. Is that clear? So let's understand more about these drones. Let's understand what they can do, for what purpose they can be used, how it will help India, right? Why is India looking at procuring these drones? That is something we should understand from a prelims and mains point of view. The MQ-9B Predator. Predator is the older name actually, later called the Reaper, and now the variant is just called MQ-9B. There are two variants available. There is a naval variant and an Air Force Army variant. The one used in the seas is called the Sea Guardian, which is specifically meant for maritime operations. It is designed for maritime operations. There is another variant for land-based and regular aerial operations called the Sky Guardian. If it's used only for air defense over land, for intelligence gathering and other purposes on land, either by the Army or Air Force, this variant is the Sky Guardian variant. Whereas for maritime purposes, the variant is called the Sea Guardian. These are the two variants available under MQ-9B. So these drones can fly at a very reasonable speed of up to 388 kilometers per hour. It has a fantastic range, intercontinental range of almost 11,000 to 12,000 kilometers with an endurance of 40 plus hours. It's essentially a high altitude, long endurance drone. It can attain altitudes of 40,000 feet. If it is so high, it can avoid any visual sighting or contact. To those on the ground, it may not even be visible to the naked eye if the drone is stationed at 40,000 feet in the sky. So it is a high altitude, long endurance, meaning it can fly for 40 plus hours with a range of 11 to 12,000 kilometers. So such a drone can be used for a variety of purposes. You can use the drone for humanitarian missions, especially during disasters, right? Let's say there is a cyclone or a tsunami and people are trapped in the sea. For search and rescue operations, the drone can be used, right? During floods, earthquakes, to in difficult to reach areas, drones can be deployed to figure out the affected areas where the people are trapped and accordingly launch search and rescue operations. So it will play a big role in search and rescue operations during disasters and emergencies. It can be used for law enforcement, particularly in our border areas or where there are conflicts going on, to improve border security, to tackle organized crime, right? To prevent smuggling and trafficking, to deal with riots and conflicts which are happening. For all these measures, for border security, law enforcement, and even to protect your airspace, and also to provide early warning, airborne early warning about incoming aerial threats of the enemy, to detect enemy missiles or enemy aircraft, give advance warnings. It can be used. It can be used for electronic warfare to carry out electronic espionage by intercepting enemy communication. The maritime variant can be specifically used for anti surface and anti submarine warfare, to hunt for naval ships and submarines and even fire missiles against them. Don't forget, this is an armed drone. There is an armed version of the drone as well, which can be used for precision strike operations, along with using it for ISR operations, which is intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, along with your regular ISR operations, that is intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. You can use for precision strikes as it comes with armed missiles. It can conduct several armed military operations, long range strategic ISR, over the horizon, beyond visual range targeting, right? So it can be deadly in targeting enemy aircraft or terror locations or terror sanctuaries or even a naval ship or a submarine, right? So these drones are very versatile. They can be deployed for multiple missions and objectives, and accordingly, you can fine tune them as well. So these drones come with advanced radar systems. It has very advanced navigation and control systems. It is remotely piloted by a batch of two pilots. Just two pilots are enough to remotely pilot the drone. It can even be put on auto mode. So basically, you can save your soldiers from the fatigue and the risk of conflict, right? A regular pilot may not be able to fly for 40 hours straight. It's impossible, right? Because human beings suffer from fatigue, but not a machine. The drone can be deployed for 40 hours straight, and it can help in long time surveillance. It can hover around a given target. All right, let's say you have a specific area you want to focus upon. You can put the drone on loiter mode. It'll keep loitering around that area, avoiding detection, flying at 40,000 feet high, and it will maintain constant surveillance, generating intelligence, helping in surveillance and reconnaissance. This could be crucial in border areas where there is infiltration happening. It can be critical during wartime, right, to monitor enemy movement. It can be crucial in maritime security to target criminals, pirates, and even terrorists and enemy threats. It could be crucial in detecting foreign naval ships and submarines and even to target them if required, right? So these drones have a tremendous advantage that they offer to the Indian Navy and as well as to the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army. That is why all the three armed forces are interested in it. Is that clear? So we are procuring 31 of these drones, which will be distributed between the three forces. So some of them will be the Sea Guardians for the Navy, and some of them will be the Sky Guardians for the Army and the Air Force. A few Sea Guardians for the Navy, few Sky Guardians for Army and Air Force. Is that clear? So it fulfills our purpose to track Pakistan's enemy deployment, to check cross-border infiltration happening from Pakistan or Bangladesh or Myanmar, to keep a check on China's military deployment, to track China's submarine deployment, to tackle piracy in the Indian Ocean, right? Or to help in disaster management. It can serve a number of applications. In fact, the Indian Navy has already procured two of them. In 2020 itself, 3 years ago, we got two of these drones on lease from the United States. The Indian Navy wanted to test out the unmanned aerial vehicle before purchasing a bigger order. So we leased two of them as a test variant, and we have been running them from 3 years. They have performed hundreds of missions for the Indian Navy across the length and breadth of Indian Ocean. And also the best part is that it reduces the cost of operations. Because if you have to deploy your fighter jets and large transport aircrafts like P-8I Poseidon, the P-8I Poseidon, which also specializes in maritime surveillance and anti-submarine warfare, will be much more expensive to maintain. It will consume a lot of fuel, right? It will require a lot of men to operate, and they can't sustain for long hours. After some time, they need rest because they will suffer from fatigue. So, given the cost and the human factor, right? These drones can be a game changer. It can save your precious equipment like P-8I Poseidon from wear and tear. You need not use the Poseidon, which is a major strategic aircraft we have for maritime surveillance and targeting submarines for anti-submarine warfare. We can use it rarely, and more frequently we can deploy the maritime drones, the Sea Guardians, right? And once deployed, they can be out for a good 2 days conducting surveillance, loitering around the target area, and then they can come back, right, for refueling. So that is a tremendous advantage with a drone. Plus, it comes packed with armed missiles, the Hellfire missiles, which can literally breathe fire on the enemy. The US has used this to deadly effect in Yemen, in Syria, in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. Around the world, the Hellfire missiles have wreaked havoc after being fired from these Predator and Reaper drones. Is that clear? The American forces, the CIA, they've effectively used these drones to launch targeted precision strikes. So this is the advantage India is going to gain by procuring the MQ-9B. Now, I want you guys to answer a basic prelims question, a current affairs question. Which of the following drones are already in service with the Indian Armed Forces? Three options have been given. The MQ-9B Searcher Heron. I'll give you 15 seconds. Let us see how many of you can answer this. The poll is live. Please go ahead and answer. Five seconds left. Majority of them have got the wrong answer. 49% are saying C, 2 and 3 only. But that's incorrect. That is completely incorrect. The right answer is option D. I just told you, we have procured two of them already. We have already started deploying them. They are in service. Indian Navy has deployed two MQ-9Bs from 2020 itself. They are in service. We are just procuring a new order of 31 more drones, right? So it's already in service. And Searcher and Heron, these are the old drones we are using from Israel. The initial unmanned aerial vehicles, which are operated by all our armed forces and security agencies. They're all from Israel, the Searcher and Heron. So we have all three in service today, right? There are two MQ-9Bs already in service with Indian Navy from 3 years. They've already conducted thousands of missions in the Indian Ocean. So correct answer is option D. We have all the three drones in service today. Next, India, Sri Lanka. The topic of connectivity between India and Sri Lanka was in news, and hence I feel it's a very important topic for your exams. So let's take a look at what topic was in news, and let's discuss in general about connectivity between India and Sri Lanka. First, I'll give you the context. A couple of important facts. Recently, a ferry service has been launched between India and Sri Lanka. This is an old service which existed 40 years ago. It had been stopped because of the war, the civil war in Sri Lanka, because of the conflict triggered by LTT Tamil militants and the hostilities present in the region along the coastline of Tamil Nadu and the Jaffna region of Sri Lanka. This ferry service had stopped. After 40 years, we have restarted this landmark ferry service, establishing a direct sea link between Tamil Nadu and Jaffna. It connects Nagapattinam over here in coastal Tamil Nadu across the Park Strait into Jaffna. It will link with the Kanke Senturai port present in the Jaffna Peninsula of northern Sri Lanka. So this ferry service was launched. The Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, they have all hailed this initiative. Right? That is how important this is. The Prime Minister, Foreign Minister themselves have spoken about the importance of this ferry service. It is designed to link Nagapattinam in Tamil Nadu with Kanke Senturai in Jaffna in northern Sri Lanka. This revival of the ferry service, right, will make it easier for people to travel between the two countries. Since very close trade and cultural relations exist between the people of Tamil Nadu and the people of Sri Lanka, right? The Sri Lankan Tamils are closely connected with Tamils on the Indian side. So to re-establish their cultural ties, familial relations, improve the people-to-people bond, and to boost tourism and trade opportunities, this ferry service is going to be critical. All right, it is going to benefit the local traders on both the sides. It will benefit the fishermen, right? It will benefit the border villages, the coastal villages, as it will improve the border trade, the cross-border trade. Now let's understand more about India-Sri Lanka connectivity. I want you to look at the map of Sri Lanka. I'll point out some important locations and we'll discuss how we are seeking to connect with Sri Lanka. Now you can see the major ports of Sri Lanka like Colombo. This is Jaffna here, the Jaffna Peninsula where Kanke Senturai is located near the Park Strait. You can see Gulf of Mannar. The Trincomalee port, another major port of Sri Lanka. The Hambantota port, which we were discussing earlier under Belt and Road Initiative, which has been developed by China, right? Even Colombo port and the terminal has been developed by China as well. Whereas Kanke Senturai has been developed by India. Even India has investments at Trincomalee and nearby Trincomalee as well. There is an oil tank farm, or there is a power plant at Sampur, the Sampur power plant which we are building, right? At Trincomalee port, there is an oil tank farm which India is rejuvenating, and we have invested in the Trincomalee port long back. Plus, we have rebuilt the Kanke Senturai port here in Jaffna, the Kanke Senturai port. All right. So these are major maritime links. From coastal Tamil Nadu, we can connect with these port locations of Sri Lanka and improve trade and connectivity. Apart from that, we are pursuing air connectivity, energy connectivity as well, right? So there is a host of connectivity projects that were launched recently, just a couple of months ago, when the Sri Lankan president Ranil Wickremesinghe paid a historic visit to India. Now, this is going to be very, very important. The ferry service that was launched from Nagapattinam to Kanke Senturai was announced during this visit of the president. During this visit, just in July, just 3-4 months back, Prime Minister Modi and President Ranil Wickremesinghe, they signed a vision document under which they have committed to improve maritime connectivity. Focus is on Indian investments in port projects and logistics at the strategic Sri Lankan ports of Colombo, Trincomalee, and Kanke Senturai. India is going to play a big role in improving logistics and shipping facilities in Sri Lanka. Indian companies will be involved in these projects. As part of this initiative, passenger ferry services are being launched. So the one between Nagapattinam, Kanke Senturai was promised here under this vision document just 3 months back. And within 3-4 months, we have already launched the first passenger ferry service. In the coming months, we'll see a second ferry service being launched between Rameshwaram in coastal Tamil Nadu with Talai Mannar in Jaffna on the Sri Lankan side. This will be the second ferry service, the passenger ferry service. We are looking to boost air connectivity with more direct flights from Chennai not just to Colombo, but Trincomalee, Batikola, and other key locations in Sri Lanka. India and Sri Lanka are also planning more direct flights from other Indian cities to Colombo to boost trade and tourism. Is that clear? From Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad, right? All the major cities. More direct flights to Colombo are being planned to boost trade and tourism, as tourism is a big source of revenue for Sri Lanka. As you know, the Sri Lankan economy is going through a dire economic crisis. So one way to revive the Sri Lankan economy is to boost tourism. You might have seen in newspapers just a day ago, Sri Lanka has provided visa-free access to several foreign countries, including India. Is that clear? Tourists from India, China, and many other countries have been chosen for a visa-free program. So tourists can be encouraged to visit Sri Lanka as the process becomes easier. So if you ever wanted to visit Sri Lanka, now is the time, right? There is no visa fee. You need not apply for a visa. Just book an air ticket, land in Sri Lanka, and you have access to Sri Lankan tourist sites. They planned to boost energy power connectivity as well, right? To interconnect the power grids, to connect the Sri Lankan power grid with BBIN grid that already links Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal. India has already interconnected the power grids of Bhutan with Bangladesh and Nepal, and we are transferring Bhutan surplus electricity to Nepal and Bhutan. So BBIN countries already have a common power grid. Now the plan is to extend this to connect with Sri Lankan power grid so Sri Lanka's energy problems can be tackled. There is focus on renewable energy. The two sides have signed an agreement to build pipelines for LNG transportation, a solar power plant at Sampur, which is being built by the National Thermal Power Corporation of India, along with pipelines for green hydrogen, green ammonia, and the required infrastructure for other clean alternate fuels to reduce emissions and to tackle climate change. They're focusing on clean, renewable energy as well. They're looking to boost hydrocarbon exploration and joint collaboration with a oil pipeline from India to Sri Lanka. As Sri Lanka depends heavily on India for petroleum products, we are considering a petroleum pipeline linking India Sri Lanka. We want to explore the offshore hydrocarbon basins of Sri Lanka to extract oil and gas, bring that to Indian refineries where we can process and produce the various products and send it back to Sri Lanka. Along with that, they are discussing an economic technology cooperation initiative. They have signed an agreement to boost economic ties and technology cooperation in key areas of technology, along with adopting Indian rupee for trade settlements and extending the UPI-based digital payments. This will facilitate easier payments for traders and tourists, right, which will help the Sri Lankan economy. Both sides have agreed to leverage India's digital public infrastructure to provide better services for Sri Lankan citizens as well. The JAM Trinity India has created with the Jandan bank accounts, Aadhaar number, and mobile phone. Through the JAM Trinity, India is today delivering very efficient government services with minimal wastage and leakage, right? With better targeting. So this is something we'll be extending to Sri Lanka. We'll share the digital public infrastructure. The model will be replicated for Sri Lanka, created for Sri Lanka as well. We are going to boost our cultural ties by exploring our Buddhist and Hindu heritage. India is planning to bring Sri Lanka under the Buddhist Circuit Initiative to revive the tourist infrastructure at all Buddhist sites in India and attract Buddhist tourists from across Asian countries, including Sri Lanka, as Sri Lanka is a Buddhist majority country. We want to connect the Ramayana sites. There are many historical Hindu pilgrimage sites in India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka that are connected to the Ramayana epic mythology, right? So by connecting them, we want to boost tourism between the countries and boost cultural ties as well. We've also announced a development package of 75 crores for the Tamil community in India, as in the Sri Lankan Tamils, right? Those who have settled in India and also those who are still in Sri Lanka, for their well-being. India has set aside an economic package. We have received a lot of Tamil refugees who are settled in India, and there are many Sri Lankan Tamils left behind in northern and eastern provinces. To look after their well-being, to rebuild their economies, their livelihood, which was destroyed by the civil war, a 75 crore economic assistance package has been set aside by India. So these are the various measures we have taken to improve economic ties, cultural ties, and more importantly, connectivity between India and Sri Lanka. So since the ferry service was launched, I feel it's very important to know more about the key connectivity projects that we are pursuing in Sri Lanka. Not just the port projects, but even the air connectivity, the energy connectivity, and as well as hydrocarbons. All these are very important for your prelims. Now take up this question. Which Sri Lankan port is located the farthest from India? A map-based, geography-based question. Is it Colombo, Kanke Senturai, Trincomalee, Hambantota? Very simple question. You just have to apply basic common sense. 15 seconds. Go ahead, give your answers. Let's see how many of you get it right. 3 seconds to go. Very good. 61% have given the right answer. It's Hambantota, which is the farthest, as it is located at the southern tip of Sri Lanka. Right? Now, coming to the questions here, Banu is asking how MQ-9B can tackle drug smuggling. Because these drones, which provide for aerial surveillance, they can enhance your border security. You can deploy them near your borders and maritime areas to check for smugglers, traffickers who are trying to sneak into your borders illegally. So by detecting their presence, you can act your border guarding forces like the Coast Guard, BSF, etc. They can intercept the smugglers and detain them. So all forms of crime can be tackled. Smuggling of drugs, smuggling of arms and weapons, right? All kinds of illicit trafficking can be tackled with the help of drones. The next topic, the recent earthquakes in Afghanistan. A topic from geography, and I feel it's very important because Afghanistan has been hit by repeated earthquakes. In the last couple of weeks itself, there have been series of earthquakes of around 6+ magnitude, and thousands of people have been killed. Hundreds of villages have been destroyed and damaged in Afghanistan. As you know, today Afghanistan is under the Taliban rule. The Taliban interim government is struggling to govern the country. It doesn't have basic resources, and people who are affected by the disaster are left for themselves. The death count is very high. People who are injured are not getting any help and assistance, leading to a humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. All right? And Afghanistan is seeing these repeated incidents of earthquakes, back-to-back multiple earthquakes, where thousands of people have been killed. And this is not the first time that this is happening. All right? There is a history of such devastating multiple back-to-back earthquakes in Afghanistan. In 2022, thousands of people were killed with similar back-to-back earthquakes. There was another major earthquake in 2015 that hit Afghanistan and Pakistan as well. In 2002, 1998, there are many such incidents which have happened in Afghanistan. So this brings me to the question, why does Afghanistan suffer from so many earthquakes? Is there a geographical reason which can explain this? Correct? If you can understand that, trust me, you can answer a basic geography question. You can expect this question to come. Since Afghanistan is in news, right? Because of the disaster, because of Taliban takeover, a geography-based question can appear in your exams. So let's understand why Afghanistan is a victim of earthquakes. What's the reason behind it? As you know, earthquake is a geophysical hazard which occurs due to tectonic activities associated with the tectonic plates and the faults that exist inside the Earth's surface. I hope you know that the continental land masses, including your seabeds, they are sitting on these solid pieces of rocks, these large plates which we call tectonic plates, and they're in constant movement, right? These different plates keep moving up against each other, and these plates will have these ruptures called faults or fault lines. So different plates can rub against each other, they can move apart, or one plate can dive against another plate, dive under the other plate, right? This becomes an active subduction zone where one plate is diving under another plate, pushing up the other plate. So such tectonic plate movement, right, along with the ruptures which might occur at the faults, the fault lines, can release the stress which is built up, the tremendous stress which is built up, the energy gets released, triggering earthquakes on the surface, right? The energy which travels through the surface of the earth triggers the trembling of the surface that leads to collapse of buildings and destroys infrastructure. So it will have the potential to kill thousands of people, maybe millions of people as well. So Afghanistan is vulnerable to so many earthquakes because of these tectonic activities and the fault lines that are present in the country. If you look at the map that I've shared here, you can easily understand Afghanistan is sitting, the country is sitting on three major fault lines. It is sitting on two major tectonic plates, the Indian plate and the Arabian plate. You have the Arabian plate, which intersects with the Indian plate. And both the Arabian and Indian plate are moving northwards in a north direction and diving, subducting under the Eurasian plate. Is that clear? Please imagine this. In western Afghanistan towards Herat, the Arabian plate is pushing northwards, diving under the Eurasian plate over here. Towards eastern Afghanistan, the Indian plate is diving northwards under Eurasian plate. Then where Indian and Arabian plates meet in southern Afghanistan near Kandahar, all right, around this area, the southern parts of Afghanistan. So this is also a major fault line here where two plates, Arabian and Indian plate, are meeting and jointly they're subducting, moving northwards and diving under the Eurasian plate. So these multiple tectonic movements and the fault lines present here is what makes Afghanistan so vulnerable to witness devastating earthquakes. Understood? If you look at the northern Hindu Kush mountain range located in northern parts of Afghanistan towards Central Asia and the Pamir Knot, they represent complex geographical formations, geological formations. These mountainous structures are a result of the constant tectonic activity. Right? In any subduction zone, when there is collision, convergence, folding and faulting occurs, where the earth material gets pushed up. If, let's say, Indian plate is diving under Eurasian plate, it pushes up the earth material, causing folds and faults, which results in mountainous structures getting formed, like the Himalayan mountains, for example. Right? The formation of Himalayas is itself a direct result of the northward movement and subduction of Indian plate under Eurasian plate. So this creates tremendous tectonic stress all across the region, from northeast India to Jammu and Kashmir, Pakistan, stretching across into Afghanistan. So there's tremendous tectonic stress built up under these plates, and if there is a rupture here, it can get released, triggering these massive earthquakes. Plus, there is a lot of complexity here, geological complexity. It's not just about Indian plate diving under Eurasian plate, which forms your Himalayas up to Hindu Kush and Pamir Knot, but even the Arabian plate, which is pushing in the same direction. From the western parts of Afghanistan, the Arabian plate is pushing northwards and diving under Eurasian plate and brushing with the Indian plate. So this creates these multiple faults and compressions. And as a result, these lines can rupture. The fractures can break apart at the plate boundaries where the plates interact, triggering these massive earthquakes along the fault lines. The Chaman fault and the main Pamir thrust. These are the major fault lines present, which is a result of the tectonic plate boundaries created by Indian plate, Eurasian plate, and your Arabian plate. Is that clear? So that is the reason why Afghanistan is so prone to repeated earthquakes. Now moving on, the sixth topic, the CTBT, Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Let's understand why the treaty was in news, why it is important. Last week, the CTBT was in news because it has been reported that Russia is looking to revoke its ratification of this important treaty. As Russia's tensions with the US has increased, Russia reportedly has made a move in its parliament. In the Russian Duma, which is the Russian parliament, a bill has been introduced. An initial draft bill has been introduced, which is seeking to revoke Russia's ratification of the CTBT. So as a result of this move, there are fears that this could increase tensions between Russia and US. If Russia were to revoke its ratification of CTBT, it might trigger a fresh nuclear arms race as a result of nuclear tests which might resume between the US and Russia. So that is the concern and fear. That's why the CTBT is in news. So let's understand what is this treaty all about. It's a very simple topic. You just need to be familiar with the facts, and I'll provide a very important analysis at the end. That is more than enough for both prelims and mains. The CTBT, as the name itself tells you, it bans all kinds of nuclear testing. Any kind of nuclear test for civilian or military purposes in all environments, be it on land or underground or underwater or in the air or even in outer space. Any kind of nuclear testing in any environment is banned under the CTBT. That's why it's called Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. It covers all the domains where nuclear weapons can be tested, from outer space to underground to underwater. All the environments are covered, and be it for a civilian purpose or a military purpose, nuclear tests cannot be conducted. It was adopted by the UN General Assembly in the year 1996. And however, it has not come into force yet because 8 nuclear weapon states, 8 countries that possess nuclear weapons, they are yet to ratify the treaty. Without them ratifying, those who possess the nuclear weapons, it will not come into force. All right, so please note down which are the countries which are yet to ratify. There is China, Egypt, Iran, Israel, and the United States. These 5 countries, they have signed the treaty but not ratified it. All right, they want to retain the option of testing if required. Amongst the 5 countries, China, Israel, US, these 3 countries are possessing nuclear weapons already. Iran has a weapons program which is being targeted by the US, but China, Israel, US already possess nuclear weapons. So these nuclear weapon countries, they have signed it but not ratified it. Then India, North Korea, Pakistan, they have not signed it at all because they want to keep the option of testing nuclear weapons if required, because they believe that CTBT and non-proliferation treaty both are discriminatory. India has rejected the CTBT and non-proliferation treaty from the beginning, even though we are committed to nuclear disarmament, right? We are committed to nuclear non-proliferation. We are not interested in signing these treaties as it is largely designed to favor the 5 permanent members of UN Security Council. According to non-proliferation treaty, the P5 countries, they can retain their nuclear weapons. US, China, Russia, UK, and France. They can retain their nuclear weapons. They can even upgrade them and even conduct tests. But India, if it signs NPT, we have to shut down our nuclear weapons program. That is how discriminatory the non-proliferation treaty is. So that is the reason why we are not going to sign CTBT as well. We want to keep the option of developing nuclear weapons and testing them if required for strategic purposes. As India faces a credible threat from Pakistan and China, to build nuclear deterrence against them, India has decided never to sign these treaties. Right? Same with Pakistan. North Korea, of course, is acting like a rogue country, developing its weapons and testing nuclear weapons as well. So these are the 9 countries which have not signed, or rather not ratified it. 3 of them have never signed, so there's no question of ratification. The other 5, they have signed it, but they have not ratified it. So out of these 9 countries, or rather, there are 8 countries given here, right? There are total of 8 countries which are actually nuclear weapon states, but they're not signing it. Some of them have nuclear weapons, like India, Pakistan, North Korea, China, Israel, US. They possess nuclear weapons and they're not ratifying it or signing it. So that is why it has not come into force yet. Even though 187 out of all the 193 countries we have, 187 countries have signed it. All right, 178 have ratified it. So there is majority support. Majority of the countries have signed it, majority have ratified it. But because these countries under Annex 2, which possess nuclear weapons, nuclear facilities, reactors. They haven't signed it. That is the reason why it has not come into force. Is that clear? According to Annex 2, which contains a list of the countries possessing nuclear plants, nuclear reactors, and facilities, right? There are a total of 44 such countries recognized under Conference on Disarmament, or the CD. It was this conference that gave birth to the CTBT Treaty in 1996. The CTBT was brought out through the Conference on Disarmament. So, under this session of the United Nations, Annex 2 list contains the list of 44 countries which at that point in 1996 possessed nuclear reactors, nuclear power stations, and nuclear material, including nuclear weapons. Right? Some of them had nuclear weapons, but others had nuclear research facilities and power stations. So all these 44 countries which have the capability to build bombs and test bombs if required, they were supposed to sign this. Without all of them signing, it will not come into effect. Now, out of these 44 countries, India, Pakistan, North Korea, China, USA, and Israel. These are the 6 out of the total 8 countries which we discussed who haven't ratified it. That's why it will never come into force. If these 8 nuclear states under Annex 2, if they don't sign, if they don't ratify, right, if the 44 countries are not part of it, then it will not come into force. Is that clear? Now, if you look at the background to this, prior to CTBT, there was one similar treaty called the Partial Test Ban Treaty, or the Limited Test Ban Treaty of 1963. It was signed between US, Soviet Union, and UK to address the nuclear tensions during the Cold War period. But however, it was a limited test ban treaty, as the name itself tells you, because it only prohibited nuclear testing in the atmosphere, underwater, and in outer space. It did not cover underground or overland nuclear tests. Underground nuclear tests and overland nuclear tests were not covered. Right? So basically, it allowed for these tests to be conducted, except for atmosphere tests, underwater, and outer space tests. That's why it was a partial treaty, a limited test ban treaty. All right. So it aligned with the then goals of non-proliferation treaty to reduce the nuclear arms race and bring down the tensions. But of course, this was not enough, because within a few years, many countries started testing and developing their own weapons, from China to India, Pakistan, North Korea, Israel, and the others. So after the Cold War came to an end, right, by 1991, there were thousands of nuclear warheads in the world, right? Many countries were repeatedly testing their nuclear arsenal, and that is why there was a global movement to tackle the nuclear arms race and the tensions. This is what led to the CD, the Conference on Disarmament, which was backed by UN General Assembly. So this led to the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty of 1996, which was finally adopted by UN General Assembly. Now, under the CTBT treaty, there is a verification regime as well to verify if someone is conducting a nuclear test. Or else, how else will you enforce the provisions of the treaty? Right? If you're prohibiting all forms of testing, there should be some way to enforce it, which means you have to monitor if someone is conducting a test. You have to monitor the tests, detect which country carried it out, which country violated or breached the terms of the treaty, and accordingly, the global community can penalize such countries which are breaking the CTBT. So, under the CTBT, there is an organization, the CTBT organization, CTBTO, which has the responsibility to monitor and enforce through a verification regime. It provides for a comprehensive verification regime. So, CTBT organization maintains a global network of sensors and stations called International Monitoring System to track any nuclear test conducted either underwater or underground or even in the atmosphere or over land. It maintains 300 monitoring facilities around the world, including seismic sensors to detect the shock waves after a nuclear test, after an underground nuclear test. It has hydroacoustic sensors in waters, in seas around the world to detect any underwater explosion. It has infrasound sensors and radionuclide sensors to pick up any signs of a nuclear test, right? Because during an explosion, ultra low frequency sound waves are emitted. Radionuclides are released into the atmosphere that might get carried by the winds. So these advanced sensors can pick them up and detect a possible nuclear test conducted by any country. All right. So it has an international data center to share this data with the global community, with the UN member countries. And it has the powers to enforce the treaty through on site inspections. The countries possessing nuclear weapons have to allow on site inspections, where CTBT inspectors will visit and inspect to check whether they're abiding by the terms of the treaty and not conducting nuclear tests. So, such a verification regime has been provided, but it has not come into force entirely, right? Because the countries we mentioned, the nuclear weapon countries, they haven't ratified it. That is why it has not come into force. But even though it hasn't come into force, it has had a positive impact. That is the important analysis here. Even though it's not in force, it has had a positive impact because many countries have placed a self-imposed temporary moratorium on any further nuclear testing. Is that clear? Now, if you look at the data from 1945 to 1996, before CTBT, more than 2,000 nuclear tests were conducted by your P5 countries, by UK, France, Soviet Union, that is Russia, China, and US. Cumulatively, they conducted more than 2,000 nuclear tests. But after CTBT was adopted, even though it didn't come into force, only 10 nuclear tests have happened. Two were conducted by India in 1998 at Pokhran. Pakistan followed this, conducted its own nuclear tests to retaliate against India's nuclear tests, right? So, four from India and Pakistan together, and six from North Korea since then. North Korea has been acting like a rogue state, conducting nuclear tests. So, from 98, no other country has conducted nuclear tests except for North Korea. All right, India, Pakistan tested only once in 98. After that, we have never tested nuclear weapons. And even the P5 countries, Israel, none of them have tested nuclear weapons. Right? China, US, Russia, UK, France, they've all put a moratorium thanks to the treaty. So it has helped in curbing the nuclear arms race. It's helped in curbing proliferation of nuclear weapons. But North Korea is the only rogue country here, which has continued testing. Even recently, a few years ago, it conducted a nuclear test. But still, CTBT has had a positive impact. It has helped in nuclear non-proliferation and in arresting nuclear testing. Now, this is where the concern comes up. If Russia is threatening to revoke its ratification, right, it is a sign that Russia wants to keep the option of testing weapons open. So that might put US on guard. And because of the tensions between them, either Russia or US might go ahead and conduct a nuclear test after many decades. If one country does it, it will push the other country to do the same. And if Russia, US test nuclear weapons, it will push China to test nuclear weapons. Because of US-China rivalry, the balance of power will get altered. So China will also counter it through its own nuclear tests. If China does it, then India will do it. If India does it, Pakistan will do it. Right? So thus it triggers a vicious cycle. Even UK, France, or even Israel would be pushed to conduct their own tests and acquire more weapons and build up their arsenal, triggering a nuclear arms race. So that is the concern associated with Russia's latest proposal to revoke its ratification. So you should know what is CTBT, when it was brought into when it was adopted by UNGA, what was its stated purpose and objective, what is its verification regime, right? Which are the nuclear weapon states which have signed non-proliferation treaty, which haven't. That is something you should be familiar with. All right. Now let's look at some questions and then we'll proceed to take up the last two topics for today. Vikram is saying all these initiatives with Sri Lanka will be in vain if opposition comes to power in Sri Lanka. The same applies to Nepal, Bangladesh, Maldives also. How can we tackle this, sir? See, this is a challenge you always deal with in international relations, right? Sometimes few governments will be friendly to us. There will be few governments which are deliberately against us. We have faced this in Nepal, in Bangladesh, in Maldives, in Sri Lanka. You're absolutely right. So what we can do is, through these initiatives and investments, we can project our influence. Doesn't matter who is in power, if they know that India is helpful for the country, they will be forced to work with India. Now, Maldives might say a lot of things on the front. Like recently, there is a new president, a president elect, right? And he's said to be a pro China, anti India figure. Openly is giving statements against India, saying he'll throw Indian troops out of Maldives. But this could just be a posturing, electoral posturing for his electorate, right? For his audience. But he knows without India, Maldives cannot thrive. No matter what China brings in, right? The assistance China gives, irrespective of that, India is critical for survival of Maldives. So the more investments we make, the more projects we take up, the more influential we become. Those who come to power, they can't ignore India. Doesn't matter with whom they are inclined. They might be trying to take an anti-India position, pro-China position. If we are significant, they will come to us. They will rely on India, and India's interest will be protected. And also, we should look at diversifying our ties. We should not just focus on one party, one few leaders. We should look at the opposition as well, try to cultivate them to be in favor of India. So that is something we should be doing. All right. So, guys, let's take up the last two topics, two small topics, and we can wrap up for today. The Rafah crossing in Gaza Strip that connects Gaza with Egypt was in news. Israel, as you know, has unleashed massive aerial assaults with limited ground attacks as well, targeting Hamas after the deadly terrorist attack. So Israel has been conducting thousands of airstrikes. It has cut off water, electricity, all basic supplies have been cut off. So the population of Gaza, right, the innocent civilians who have nothing to do with Hamas, they are trapped, and it's triggered a humanitarian situation. Almost 5,000 plus Palestinians have been killed in these Israeli military operations. Israel is facing a lot of criticism for violating human rights, right? In the name of targeting terrorists, it's targeting civilians. So this crisis has reached dangerous proportions. So that is why the United States and the United Nations, they brought a lot of pressure on Israel and worked with Egypt to open the Rafah crossing point, the land border crossing point, so that relief material at least can be dispatched from Egypt into Gaza. All right. See, Gaza has three major checkpoints. The Erez crossing here to the north of Gaza with Israel, the Kerem Shalom goods crossing over here in the south of Gaza near the Egyptian border. These two crossing points are under Israeli control. Israel has closed both the border crossing points. So nothing can go in or nothing can get out. The only other crossing point here is Rafah, because the sea route is fully blocked. Israeli Navy has imposed a naval blockade in the Mediterranean, blocking out Gaza completely from the world. The only other opening is the Rafah crossing that you see here in the map that opens towards Egypt. This remained closed for many months. Now, because of the crisis, US and UN put pressure on Israel to allow basic relief material and aid material to be sent through Rafah crossing. Finally, aid trucks entered Gaza bringing some basic medicines and supplies, etc. India also has sent a humanitarian assistance to Palestinians. As we strongly support the two-state solution, the right of Palestinians to have their own country, right? We do condemn terrorism. We have supported Israel to target Hamas. Israel has every right to defend itself. Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization. There's no doubt about it. But doesn't mean Israel can use disproportionate force targeting innocent civilians. That's where the line has to be drawn. So India also has made this very clear, just like US and all the other countries. And we have sent relief material to help Palestinians. Indian Air Force C-17 Globemaster aircraft, which is a strategic transport aircraft that we have procured from the US, has carried several tons of relief material, 6.5 tons of medical aid, basic surgical equipment, medical aid, etc. supplies, and another 32 tons of relief material like tents, some basic food, water purification tablets, etc. All such basic material was airlifted by Indian Air Force to the El Arish airport in Egypt. Near the Rafah crossing, approximately over here, this is where the El Arish air base of Egypt is located. The El Arish Air Base and Airport is located here. just 1 hour drive from Rafah. So this is where Indian Air Force has sent all the relief material. And from here, it will be dispatched into Rafah crossing into Gaza. So please note down where is Rafah crossing located. Also note down the other important border crossings of Gaza. Now coming to the last topic, Project Udbhav. Indian Army has launched Project Udbhav. So you should know what is this initiative. It's a major initiative of the Indian Army. It's quite interesting as well. Under Project Udbhav, which has been launched by Indian Army with the USI, United Service Institution of India, which is a defense services think tank, the goal is to harness the ancient military knowledge and strategic thinking which is present in our scriptures, in ancient epics and treatises, and in various Indian empires and kingdoms, from Cholas to the Marathas, the Ahom kingdom, right? From strategic thinkers like Chanakya to Tiruvalluvar. There are a lot of historical thoughts by these philosophers, thinkers, and various kings, empires, and kingdoms, where there is a lot of indigenous military knowledge, from statecraft to espionage to dealing with wars to diplomacy to negotiations, right? All these theories are present, these strategies, these tactics related to warfare, security, terrorism, covert wars, everything is present in ancient India and medieval India. So the goal is to harness the ancient strategic acumen of India and bring that into contemporary military training. Because right now, most of our strategic thinking is driven by Western philosophy, Western thinking, primarily from inspired by Western countries. Now, India wants to make this more indigenous, give this a more rooted approach to change the very culture of strategic thinking and security and to revamp the strategic vocabulary itself by bringing more Indianness into our defense planning and strategic thinking. So, that is the goal here of Project Udbhav, to synthesize ancient military wisdom and knowledge and adopt this into contemporary military practices. So, under the initiative, the USI, which is a think tank, a defense think tank, will focus on research. It will conduct workshops, seminars to bring out this ancient military knowledge and strategic thinking and to incorporate this into military pedagogy, into military training of junior and other middle and senior officers in the Indian Armed Forces. So, from statecraft to warfare to diplomacy to strategic thinking, right? Even espionage, covert operations, terrorism. Regarding all of this, there is ancient thought available in India. So we just have to learn from that, adopt that. And there are many examples that we can give as well. Like Chanakya's Arthashastra is a wonderful treatise. It not only deals with revenue administration, land administration, etc. It also deals with espionage, statecraft, wars, covert operations, intelligence operations, deals with terrorism as well. For example, if you look at Chanakya's Mandala theory in Arthashastra, he talks about Ari-Mitra relationship, the friend-enemy relationship. He says that Ari's Ari should be cultivated as a Mitra, meaning enemy's enemy should be a friend, right? It's a classic military strategy, which applies in today's world as well. Enemy's enemy is a friend. You identify your enemy's enemy and build close ties with them. You collude with them to jointly target your common enemy, right? So there are many more examples that you can look at from Arthashastra, from Niti Sara by Kamandaki, the Mahabharata and Bhagavad Gita, right? Even Ramayana and all the other epics, the Indian epics, the mythology texts, they have a treasure trove of military strategies related to statecraft, diplomacy, negotiations as well, right? Then Tirukural, the classic Tamil text, the Tamil literature text by Tiruvalluvar, the legendary Tamil philosopher. Tirukural deals with ethical conduct of humans in all aspects of human life, including in warfare. Now we can draw a parallel here with Geneva Convention. Today, Geneva Convention promotes ethical conduct in war to deal with war crimes and crimes against humanity. It establishes the standard operating procedures for a war or conflict. Now, this is something Tiruvalluvar had dealt with in Tirukural while talking about ethical conduct in warfare, right? Then you look at the Mauryas, Look at the rule of Ashoka, the Cholas. The Cholas were a mighty naval empire. They projected power and influence from today's Sri Lanka, Maldives to Indonesia to Thailand to China, right? From South China Sea to Bay of Bengal to Indian Ocean. The Cholas were dominant. They were a dominant naval military power. They defeated the Sri Vijaya Empire by fighting maritime battles. They dominated and controlled the Malacca Strait back in those days. They had very good ties with the Song dynasty of China. They jointly countered piracy as well near Singapore, near Malacca. Look, fought the legendary naval battle of Saraigat on the Brahmaputra and delivered a crushing defeat to the Mughal naval forces. Look at Chhatrapati Shivaji's guerrilla tactics, right? The pioneer in guerrilla and jungle warfare tactics and also modern naval warfare. So these are various strategic thoughts, military knowledge that we would like to incorporate from ancient medieval India into modern contemporary military training. That is the core purpose of Project Udbhav. Is that clear? So on this note, I would like to complete my discussion for today. We have covered all the key topics. I would just like to take a look if there are any questions left, and after that we can sign off for today. Ashwin is asking, guerrilla warfare means the practice of using forest or the terrain to your advantage to take cover and launch surprise ambush attacks. So that is guerrilla warfare, like what Naxals do. The ambush attacks Naxals carry out. It's an example of guerrilla warfare tactic. Praneeth is asking, can Hamas possibly siphon off all relief material meant for Palestinians? It is possible. But however, since the relief material is provided through UN agencies and Egyptian Red Crescent, they will monitor as to who the relief material will be provided to. So that will place a checks and balance. It will ensure Hamas will not misuse it. But yes, that possibility is always there. Hamas can threaten the relief agencies and workers and snatch it from them and divert it away from civilians. It is possible. Akash is asking, the MQ-9B drone deal includes technology transfer as well? No, not as of now. It is just direct purchase from India. We're just purchasing the technology from US. The drones are being procured. There is no transfer of technology as of now. It might happen going forward. In the coming years, maybe US might transfer the technology to India. All right. So guys, these are the questions. I hope it was a good session. I hope you guys have understood everything. Do let me know how it went. We'll catch up again. Till then, take care. Have a good night.